The school bell exploded through the air as hundreds of students poured into the parking lot, laughing, shouting, backpacks slamming against doors, normal chaos. But then everything froze. My 17-year-old daughter stepped out into the sunlight, and at that exact second, HOA Karen burst through the crowd like a wild animal, gripping a metal rod raised high above her head, her face twisted with rage. Kids screamed. Teachers stumbled back in disbelief. I saw my daughter's smile drop into terror as Karen charged toward her, swinging that rod with full force, aimed right at her skull. And I was standing just a few feet away, watching the impossible unfold in slow motion as Karen's arm came down. Cut. Before we continue, I want you to do something for me. Tell me which city you're watching from. I love seeing where everyone joins from. New York, Houston, Phoenix, Chicago, tiny towns I've never even heard of. Drop your city in the comments. And if you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss stories like this, stories that expose the truth, protect our kids, and remind us that justice still matters. Now, let me take you back to a day I will never forget. For months, our neighborhood HOA Karen had been obsessed with my 17-year-old daughter. It started with petty things, complaining that my daughter's car took up too much space, accusing her of being too loud, even filing false HOA reports about her walking home after school. We ignored her at first, thinking she was just another busybody neighbor with too much time on her hands. But then Karen's behavior turned strange, staring at my daughter from across the street, following her walks, whispering things under her breath whenever my daughter passed by. I reported it, warned her, even tried to talk to her like a normal human being. But Karen didn't want peace. She wanted control. And on the day of the incident, something snapped inside her. Something darker than anything we had seen before. Because when that school bell rang, my daughter stepped out the door like any other kid ready to head home, and Karen was already waiting, hidden in the crowd, gripping a metal rod she had stolen from a maintenance shed. I didn't know it then, but what Karen did next would change everything, our neighborhood, our school, and our lives. And yes, the entire thing was caught on camera. So let's start from the very beginning, because you need to understand how far this woman went and how dangerously close she came to destroying everything I love. That morning started like any other, yet there was a heaviness in the air I couldn't ignore, the kind that makes you pause for no clear reason, like your gut senses the storm long before the clouds appear. My 17-year-old daughter, Emily, rushed downstairs with her backpack bouncing against her shoulder, her hair half-tied like she always did when she overslept. She tried to hide it behind a smile, but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. She hadn't slept well, and when I asked why, she just shrugged and said she kept waking up from weird noises outside. I brushed it off at first, assuming it was just raccoons or the usual neighborhood sounds, but deep down, something felt off, like her words were a puzzle piece I didn't yet know how to place. During breakfast, she kept glancing toward the front window, almost as if checking whether someone was there. When I asked what was wrong, she gave a soft laugh and said it was nothing, but her fingers nervously tapping the table told a different story. And then came the moment I still regret not fully understanding. She leaned forward, voice low, and whispered, "Dad, do you ever feel like someone's watching you?" I froze. It wasn't the question, it was the fear behind it. But I put a hand on her shoulder, told her she was safe, told her she didn't need to worry about anything. I didn't know that the person she sensed was already planning something far worse than anyone could imagine. When we pulled up at school, the parking lot was still quiet, just a few early students and teachers starting their day. But then, as I leaned over to say goodbye, I saw her, Karen, standing across the street near the trees, pretending to check her phone but staring directly at my daughter with a strange, unsettling intensity. It wasn't the usual annoyed Karen look. This was different, colder, almost calculating. Emily noticed too. Her smile faded instantly. She swallowed hard and whispered, "She's been doing that a lot lately. Yesterday she was by the back gate after practice, just standing there." My chest tightened. That wasn't normal. That wasn't just HOA nosiness. That was something darker. I stepped out of the car, ready to confront her, but the second she noticed me move, she turned and disappeared behind the trees as if she hadn't been there at all. I reported it to the school office, but they dismissed it as a concerned parent waiting for someone. I wanted to push harder, but Emily begged me not to make a scene. She didn't want to be embarrassed or turn into the center of gossip. So I forced myself to let it go, a mistake I wouldn't discover until it was nearly too late. Throughout the day, Emily texted me updates like she usually did, a photo of her lunch, a message about her pop quiz, a joke about her chemistry teacher's terrible handwriting, but woven between them were small hints that something wasn't right. She said she saw Karen near the side gate during second period. Then again across the street by the bleachers around lunchtime. Emily thought maybe she was imagining it, but her messages became shorter, more nervous, less like herself. Around noon, she texted, "Dad, I swear she's following me." My brain instantly went into protective mode. I told her to stay inside the building and stick with her friends. She tried, but she still had classes to move between, still had hallways and outdoor paths she needed to walk through. And every time she stepped outside, she felt eyes burning into her. Her best friend, Mia, later told me Emily kept looking over her shoulder that entire day, jumped whenever someone walked too close, and clutched her backpack straps like she was bracing for something. That wasn't my daughter was confident, strong, social, the kid who always volunteered to help others. Seeing her afraid, that shattered me. While she struggled through her school day, I spent mine fighting an uneasiness I couldn't shake. I sat at work staring at my phone, waiting for her to text, checking the time every few minutes, replaying the image of Karen lurking by the trees. I knew Karen had always been difficult, cruel, petty. She fined us for having our garbage cans 1 inch too close to the curb, complained that Emily's car looked too bright, filed noise complaints when Emily laughed on the porch phone with her friends. But this? Lurking near a school? Following a teenager? Gripping a metal rod from the maintenance shed earlier in the morning, as I'd later learn, like she was preparing for something? That wasn't petty. That was unhinged. When the final period approached, Emily texted me one last time, "Bell's about to ring. Can't wait to go home." Today felt weird. I told her I loved her, that I'd be there early, just in case. And thank God I did. I arrived 10 minutes before dismissal and parked near the main walkway, the sun warm but my chest tight with dread. Students gathered by the doors inside, ready to pour out once the bell rang. Suddenly, through the crowd of waiting parents, I saw her, Karen, emerging from behind a parked maintenance cart, her eyes locked onto the front doors with a chilling stillness, as if she wasn't looking for someone, but stalking someone. She had something long and metallic in her hand, half hidden behind her leg. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't blink. Everything inside me screamed to move, to run, to get to my daughter before that woman did. And then, exactly at that moment, the school bell rang. Doors burst open. Students flooded out. Backpacks, laughter, shoes scraping concrete, shouts echoing. And among them, stepping into the sunlight with a relieved smile, was my daughter. But Karen stepped forward too. And before I could even open my mouth, she tightened her grip on the metal rod, and charged. If I'm being honest, the signs of Karen's unraveling had been growing for months, each one small enough to dismiss individually but, together, forming a pattern of someone slowly losing grip on reality. It began with little neighborly disputes, the kind everyone laughs off at first. The first was a parking fight. My daughter had parked her car, a modest silver sedan, in front of our own house, but Karen stormed across the street claiming Emily had blocked her view of the road. I remember the way she jabbed her finger in the air, face flushed, shouting that teenagers ruin neighborhoods. Emily apologized even though she had done nothing wrong, but that apology didn't disarm Karen, it empowered her. That same week she reported us to the HOA for noise disturbance, because Emily had laughed too loudly on FaceTime with her best friend. A week later we got a formal HOA fine because Karen claimed Emily's backpack being left on our porch lowered property appeal. It became comical at first, until it didn't. Karen escalated. She began accusing Emily of things she didn't do, scratching her car, leaving trash on her lawn, walking her dog too close to Karen's flowers. The HOA investigated each claim and found no truth, yet Karen refused to stop. Each accusation seemed to make her angrier, like she wasn't looking for justice, she was looking for a target. And she chose Emily. The worst part wasn't the lies, it was the looks. Karen developed this habit of staring at Emily, not with annoyance, but with a burning resentment, like she hated the mere fact a teenage girl existed near her perfect world. Emily would be walking to her car, and Karen would stand at her window, blinds half open, eyes locked on her with a disturbing, deadpan expression. At first Emily tried to ignore it, brushing it off as just Karen being Karen, but over time she stopped laughing outside, stopped sitting on the porch after school, stopped feeling safe in her own home. One evening, after Emily returned from the library, she rushed inside, out of breath and visibly shaken. She told me Karen had followed her in her car for 3 blocks, staying right behind her, turning each corner she turned, slowing down whenever she slowed. That was the night I realized this wasn't petty HOA nonsense, this was obsession. I marched across the street and confronted Karen, trying to be calm but firm. I told her she had crossed a line, that following a teenage girl was dangerous, unacceptable, and illegal. Karen didn't apologize. She didn't even deny it. She stood in her doorway with her arms crossed, a strange grin twitching at the corner of her mouth, and said, "Your daughter needs to learn her place." That sentence froze my blood. I told her if she ever came near Emily again, it would involve the police. That's when something snapped, visibly, physically. Her expression changed from smugness to fury so quickly it was like watching a mask tear off. She lunged forward, pointing her finger at my chest, screaming that Emily had disrespected her, that kids nowadays needed discipline, that she was cleaning up the neighborhood. I had never seen that level of rage in her eyes. It was the moment I realized she didn't just dislike my daughter, she despised her. After that confrontation, Karen's behavior turned darker and more erratic. She began lurking around places she had no reason to be. Emily saw her near the school's back gate. Then at the park where Emily jogged. Once by the grocery store parking lot, watching her from behind a pillar. Emily started taking different routes home, avoiding certain streets, holding her phone tight in her hand. She tried to hide her fear from me, but fear has a way of revealing itself even through forced smiles. I installed cameras around the house, told her to stay with friends whenever possible, and I started driving her everywhere, even short distances. But the problem was that Karen wasn't just unpredictable, she was persistent, fueled by some unhealthy fixation that we didn't yet understand. The neighbors had begun whispering about her too. Some said she'd recently lost a major HOA vote and blamed Emily for being a distraction. Others claimed she was jealous of Emily, her youth, her kindness, her friendships, her future. There were rumors Karen's own daughter had moved away and cut contact years earlier, and maybe seeing Emily, happy, supported, loved, triggered something painful inside her. Whatever the motive was, it had brewed into something toxic. Something dangerous. And the danger peaked the morning of the incident. According to the maintenance staff, who only spoke up after everything happened, Karen had been spotted near the school grounds earlier that day. She wasn't a parent, she had no reason to be there, yet she waited near the maintenance shed until the worker stepped away for his break. And that's when she took it, a heavy, rusted metal rod, used for propping open the old gym doors. Cameras caught her shoving it under her jacket before slipping around the side of the school. But no one reported her. No one thought a woman like her, a suburban HOA enforcer, could pose a violent threat. They all underestimated her breaking point. We didn't know then that Karen had spent the entire day circling the school grounds. Not once. Not twice. But 7 times. Waiting. Watching. Planning. She wasn't acting in a moment of anger, she was acting on a decision she had already made. A decision to hurt my daughter. A decision that nearly turned deadly. And as the school bell rang, and the students rushed out the doors, Karen stepped out with one goal in mind: punish my daughter for existing. Punish her for being everything she wasn't. And with that metal rod in her hand, she was finally ready to do what she had been imagining for weeks. The moment that school bell rang, it was like the world erupted into a whirlwind, doors flying open, students spilling into the parking lot, laughter, shouting, backpacks slapping against shoulders, sneakers scuffing against concrete. But inside all that noise, my eyes were locked on only one thing: Karen, emerging from behind the maintenance cart with the metal rod clutched in her hand, her face twisted into something so full of rage it barely looked human anymore. I watched her push through the crowd, weaving between students with a sickening purpose, her eyes glued to my daughter like a predator stalking prey. Emily stepped out the doors a second later, sunlight catching her hair, a relieved smile just starting to appear on her face, and then the smile melted into confusion as she noticed everyone backing away, kids turning their heads, eyes widening. That was when Mia, her best friend, screamed, "Emily, move!" Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade, and Emily spun around just in time to see Karen charging at her, the metal rod raised high above her head. My heart stopped. I mean it, it felt like the world slammed into slow motion, every sound muffled, every movement stretched, my vision tunneling until all I could see was that metal rod cutting through the air. I didn't think, I just ran. I pushed through parents, students, teachers, shouting Emily's name, but my voice felt drowned inside the roars of panic erupting around me. Kids scattered in every direction, some screaming, some frozen in shock, some pulling out their phones because they couldn't believe what they were witnessing. A teacher dropped her clipboard and sprinted toward them, yelling at Karen to stop, but Karen didn't hear anything, she was locked in, consumed, obsessed. Emily stumbled backward, barely dodging Karen's first swing. The metal rod sliced the air so close to her face it made a sharp whistle, a sound that will haunt me forever. The rod slammed into the pavement with a violent, metallic crack, sending sparks jumping off the concrete. Emily gasped, hands up, stumbling over her backpack, trying to keep her balance. Karen lifted the rod again, her breath coming out in angry shouts, her voice shaking as she screamed, "You think you can disrespect me?" Those words didn't even make sense. My daughter had never disrespected her. But Karen wasn't in reality anymore, she was trapped inside whatever twisted narrative she'd invented. I kept running, my legs burning, my chest screaming for air, but time kept stretching, stretching, like my body wasn't moving fast enough. A group of students tried to shield Emily, shouting at Karen to stop. One kid threw his skateboard between them, trying to block the rod, but Karen knocked it away like it weighed nothing. She was not thinking. She was not seeing. She was just attacking. Emily tried to run, but Karen lunged, grabbing the strap of her backpack. Emily twisted free at the last second, the strap tearing, but it slowed her just enough that Karen managed to swing again. This time the rod scraped across the side of a nearby car with an ear-piercing screech, denting the metal as if it were soft. Parents gasped. A few shouted for help. A teacher, the same one who had dropped her clipboard, threw herself between them, arms outstretched, screaming at Karen to stop, but Karen shoved her aside with a force that sent the teacher stumbling. Karen wasn't just angry. She was unstoppable. Out of breath, terrified, Emily backed toward the curb, her knees shaking, tears forming in her eyes as she whispered, "Please stop, please," but Karen raised the rod again, the sunlight catching its cold, rusty surface, and for a second everything went silent. No voices. No footsteps. Just the pounding of my heartbeat and the image of that rod high above her head. Emily ducked at the last possible moment. The rod whooshed past her scalp and smashed into the ground so hard the end bent, bits of rust and concrete flying everywhere. Emily screamed. Karen roared. And I felt something break inside me, not fear, but something far fiercer, a primal instinct I'd never felt before. I leaped forward, shoving past the last student in my way, ready to throw myself between my daughter and the woman trying to harm her. But before I could reach them, Karen swung again, wild, uncontrolled, desperate, and Emily fell backward onto the pavement, hands scraping, breath shaking, eyes wide as Karen towered over her with that rod ready for a final strike. It was the most horrifying sight of my life, my daughter on the ground, helpless, and a grown woman standing above her with a weapon. Everything slowed again, the world turning into a tunnel of terror. But then, just as Karen's arms pulled back for the blow that would have ended everything, something, or rather, someone, slammed into her from the side with explosive force. The rod flew out of Karen's hands, clattering across the pavement. Students gasped. Teachers screamed. Karen tumbled sideways, crashing into a car door. And Emily, trembling, breathless, paralyzed with shock, stared at the person who had just saved her. The attack had begun, but the story was far from over. Because the moment that rod hit the ground, everything changed. The moment Karen's metal rod flew from her hands and clattered across the pavement, the entire parking lot seemed to inhale at once, like the world itself froze to understand what had just happened. I skidded to a stop only a few feet away, my legs burning from sprinting, but my eyes were locked on the person who had saved my daughter, Coach Ramirez, the quiet, broad-shouldered PE teacher everyone respected but no one truly knew. A veteran with years of military service behind him, he moved with a calm yet lethal precision, grabbing Karen's shoulders before she could regain her balance, pinning her arms to her sides with swift efficiency. His voice boomed across the parking lot, back away from the student. And for a moment, Karen looked stunned, her rage colliding with the reality of someone she could not overpower. Emily gasped from the ground, trembling, her palms scraped, her breathing uneven, as Coach Ramirez positioned himself like a shield between her and Karen. Mia rushed over, dropping to her knees beside my daughter, pulling her into a shaking embrace, whispering, "It's okay, you're okay. I'm right here." Meanwhile Karen, her hair wild and face flushed with madness, snarled like a cornered animal. "She provoked me," she shrieked, pointing at Emily with trembling hands as she tried to twist out of Ramirez's grip. "That little brat has been harassing me for months. I was defending myself." Students gasped at the insanity of her words. A few even muttered curses, because they had just witnessed the opposite. My daughter had been the one nearly beaten. But Karen wasn't done. She jerked violently, trying to break free, screaming, "She came at me first. I was just trying to protect myself from her." Her voice cracked into hysterical sobs, and for a moment she actually tried to throw herself onto the ground, as if pretending Emily had pushed her. But Ramirez didn't budge. He held her firmly, his voice steady and controlled, a tone that carried authority born from years of experience. "Ma'am," he said through clenched teeth, "you need to stop resisting." Karen didn't listen. She twisted, kicked, and screamed about kids these days, and disrespectful teenagers, trying to rewrite the truth even as dozens of students stood around her. And then the real twist came, the moment everything shifted from chaos to clarity. A voice rang out from the crowd, "It's all recorded. I got the whole thing." Everyone turned. A junior named Avery, one of the school's quiet tech kids, always wearing headphones and carrying a tablet, stood on top of a nearby bench, holding his phone high. "She attacked Emily," he said loudly, his voice clear and certain. "I've got every second. She followed her. She aimed at her. She tried to hit her." A wave of whispers rippled through the students. Phones came out. Screens were raised. A few kids shouted, "We saw it too," and "She tried to hit her twice." Karen froze. For the first time, a flicker of fear crossed her face, real fear, not of consequences, but of exposure. She realized she hadn't just attacked a teenager in broad daylight, she had done it surrounded by witnesses equipped with cameras. "Give me that phone," she suddenly screamed, lunging toward Avery like a wild animal. Ramirez yanked her back, holding her fast, but Karen fought like someone possessed. "Delete it. You can't film me. You're breaking the law. Give it to me now." Her shrieks cut through the air, echoing off the cars and pavement. Students backed away. Some teachers stepped closer, forming a half-circle around Ramirez to help contain the chaos. And while Karen thrashed and fought, Emily tried to sit up, her voice small and trembling as she whispered, "Dad, Dad." I was beside her in an instant, dropping to my knees and pulling her into my arms, feeling her heartbeat racing against my chest. Her whole body shook uncontrollably, and I held her tighter, whispering over and over, "You're safe now. I've got you. I'm here." But even through my relief, fury pulsed inside me, raw, primal, uncontrollable. I stood up slowly, placing myself between Emily and Karen, just as Karen's eyes snapped to me. There was no remorse. No regret. Only venom. "Your daughter," she spat, "thinks she can walk around like she owns this place. Someone needed to teach her a lesson." Those words cut deeper than any blow. I stepped forward, only inches from Karen now, my entire body trembling with restrained rage. "You tried to hurt a child," I whispered, my voice low and shaking. "My child." Karen opened her mouth to retort, but then her eyes rolled slightly, like she wasn't fully aware of what she'd done, or maybe she was just realizing the gravity of it all. And suddenly, another voice broke through the crowd, authority, command, finality. "Police. Step back." A school resource officer, Officer Grant, ran toward us from the far side of the campus, having responded to the screams. He reached Ramirez, nodded, and together they handcuffed Karen, who began wailing dramatically the second she heard the clink of metal. "No. This is a mistake," she screeched. "They're lying. She attacked me." Cameras kept rolling. Students kept watching. Some crying. Some furious. Some shaken to their core. When Karen saw the phone still filming, she lunged again, screaming, "Stop recording me," but the officer held her back easily. Then came the final twist within the twist. Avery stepped closer, holding his phone securely with both hands and saying, loud enough for the entire parking lot to hear, "Ma'am, you're on video the whole time. You followed her. You swung first. You almost hit her. You did this." Karen's face drained of color. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She knew it. We all knew it. There was no escaping. No blaming. No twisting. No lies left to hide behind. And as Karen was dragged toward the patrol car, still muttering, still shaking, still desperately trying to cling to whatever delusion she lived in, I turned back to my daughter, my brave, terrified daughter, and realized something I wouldn't forget. Karen hadn't just attacked her. Karen had been building toward this moment for months. This wasn't a bad day. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a dangerous person who finally showed the world who she truly was. And the moment that recording began spreading through the crowd, justice was already rolling toward her like a storm she could never outrun. The moment Officer Grant and Coach Ramirez secured Karen and began escorting her toward the patrol car, you could feel the entire atmosphere shift, fear turning into anger, shock turning into unity, and injustice turning into something much heavier, consequences. But the real turning point came seconds later, when the second police cruiser screeched into the school lot, lights flashing violently across the pavement. The door flew open, and out stepped me, not just as a father, but as a federal officer, badge glinting under the midday sun, my vest still strapped from leaving an active briefing the second I got the emergency call. The crowd gasped, teachers whispered, students murmured as I approached with a controlled fury that made even Officer Grant stiffen. Karen's eyes widened when she saw the badge. All that fake victim energy evaporated instantly. "No, no, this isn't fair," she shrieked, stumbling backward as if the badge itself burned her. He can't be here. He's going to twist things. He's going to frame me." But it was too late. Her lies had already collapsed under the weight of evidence and witnesses. I stepped up to her slowly, my voice steel-cold as I said, "Karen, you attacked a minor. You stalked her. You brought a weapon onto school property. And you did it because you thought no one would stop you." She shook her head rapidly, her hair whipping her face, her chest rising and falling in ragged breaths. "As she provoked me. As she ruined everything. That girl, she's been after me for months." Her accusation sounded ridiculous even to her own ears, and she seemed to realize it too, because her voice cracked into a desperate sob. Students stepped forward one by one, forming a semicircle. Some trembling. Some crying. Some still recording. Avery climbed down from the bench and held out his phone to me like it was the most important evidence in the world. "Sir," he said, hands shaking slightly but voice steady, "I got everything." She was waiting for her. She ran at her. Emily never touched her. She tried to hurt her. Another student chimed in, "She almost hit her head. She chased her with a rod. She pushed Ms. Palmer. She's been acting weird all week." Their testimonies poured out like a dam breaking, every student, every teacher, every witness finally speaking the truth they had seen, no longer afraid, no longer confused. Karen's face twisted with humiliation. "Stop lying," she screamed at the kids, lunging forward again, but the officers held her tight as she thrashed like someone possessed. "You're all against me. This was her fault. She started it. She did." She jerked violently, enough that the officers had to tighten their grip. They bent her over the hood of the police car, securing her hands behind her back as she screamed, wailed, cursed, and fought. And then, silence. Thick, heavy silence. Because Emily, still sitting on the pavement with Mia holding her, had begun to sob in a way that shattered the hearts of everyone around. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. Tears streamed down her face. And as she cried, not just from fear but from shock, betrayal, and the weight of what almost happened, every student fell quiet. The officers fell quiet. Even the wind seemed to pause. That's when I knelt down beside her again, pulling her into my arms, feeling her entire body trembling against mine. "You're safe," I whispered, though my voice cracked. "You're okay. I'm here. I'm here." She gripped my shirt so tightly it felt like she was afraid I would disappear if she let go. "Dad, she was really going to, she was going to hit me," she whispered through uneven breaths. "Why? Why would she want to hurt me? I never did anything to her." Mia rubbed her back gently, crying too. "It's not your fault," I said firmly. "It was never your fault." But inside me, something broke in a different way, because I finally understood the truth. And it was worse than anything we imagined. Officer Grant approached me quietly, holding a small folder they had retrieved from Karen's bag during the pat-down. "Sir, you should see this." He hesitated, then handed it to me. Inside were printed screenshots, photos of Emily. Walking to school. Leaving the house. Sitting on the porch. At the grocery store. At practice. All taken without her knowledge. Stalking. Tracking. Every day of the last 2 weeks. And at the back of the folder, was a handwritten list. A list of rules. Things Karen believed Emily should follow. Things like: no parking outside after 5 p.m. No loud talking. Must show respect when walking past property. Must stop ignoring me. And at the bottom: correct her behavior. No more warnings. My blood froze. Karen hadn't snapped suddenly. She had planned this. She had studied Emily's schedule, her habits, her routes. And she had brought that metal rod because she believed she had the right, no, the duty, to correct my daughter. Rage burned through me so violently I had to clench my fists to keep from shaking. She planned this, I whispered. She planned to hurt her. Officer Grant nodded solemnly. She's facing multiple felony charges now. Stalking. Assault. Attempted harm with a weapon. Trespassing on school grounds. And with you being a federal officer, this will go straight into higher jurisdiction. Karen overheard that last part. And that's when she truly panicked, real panic, not theatrical. "No," she screamed as the officers lifted her into the squad car. "You can't do this. I was just trying to help. She's the problem." The door slammed shut. Her voice cut off. She disappeared behind tinted glass. And just like that, justice had finally slammed down. Hard. But as I turned back to my daughter, shaking, crying, broken yet alive, I realized this wasn't the end. This was only the moment the world finally understood what we had been living with quietly for months. And the only thing left now was the aftermath. In the days that followed, the world felt strangely quiet, not peaceful, but the kind of quiet that settles after a storm tears through a town, leaving people blinking at the sunlight as they try to understand what's left standing in what's forever changed. Emily didn't return to school immediately. The counselor recommended a few days at home, and honestly, she needed it. She was jumpy at sudden sounds, flinched whenever someone knocked on the door, and couldn't walk past the living room window without checking both sides of the street first. Nights were the hardest. I'd find her sitting upright in bed, hugging her knees under the blankets, whispering she could still hear the metal rod scraping the pavement. As a parent, it broke something inside me, not because she was scared, but because she thought she needed to hide that fear from us. But we didn't let her. We surrounded her with family movie nights, late-night ice cream runs, long talks on the porch, anything to remind her she was safe, loved, protected, and never alone. Her mom took her on walks every evening just to help her breathe again. Her little brother left sticky notes on her mirror that said things like, "You're strong," and "I love you." And slowly, Emily began to smile again. The school held an emergency meeting the following Monday. Hundreds of parents showed up. The principal, with tears in her eyes, announced new safety protocols, a permanent security presence during dismissal, new fencing by the maintenance area, mandatory ID checks for any non-parent near the campus, and a fully anonymous student reporting system to prevent dangerous behavior from ever being ignored again. They asked me to speak, not as an officer, but as a parent. I told them the truth, that no system is perfect, that danger can slip through cracks even in the safest neighborhoods, and that our responsibility isn't just to react after something happens, but to see the warning signs before they turn into headlines. The teachers cried. Parents clapped. Students nodded with a seriousness far beyond their years. Karen's arrest became official within 24 hours. The DA filed multiple felony charges: aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, endangering a minor, stalking, trespassing on school property, and obstruction. When the detectives reviewed the folder found in her bag, the photos, the list of rules, the handwritten line about correction, they added premeditation to the charges. Even the officers who booked her later said they had never seen someone so deeply tangled in their own delusions. She made headlines across the county. Some people called her the HOA attacker. Others simply called her dangerous. A judge issued a restraining order that stretched across the entire district. She couldn't come within 1,000 feet of Emily, our home, the school, or anyone who witnessed the attack. The trial date was set, and while we prepared for it emotionally, Emily learned something powerful about herself: she wasn't broken. She wasn't weak. She had survived something terrifying, and she was still here, still fighting, still healing. One evening, about a week after the incident, we sat on the porch watching the sun dip behind the rooftops. Emily looked at me and said, "Dad, I'm not going to let what she did define me." And in that moment, I knew we were finally stepping out of the shadow of that parking lot. The community rallied around her. Students made her cards. Teachers checked on her. Neighbors dropped off meals. Even people we'd barely spoken to before were suddenly standing by our side, proving that while one person had chosen cruelty, hundreds chose compassion. And that is what justice looks like, not just in the courts, but in the hearts of the people who refuse to stay silent. Because justice is not only punishment. It's protection. It's change. It's the promise that when someone tries to harm an innocent child, the entire community rises up and says, "Not here. Not ever." And that brings me to you, the person watching this, listening to this, taking in every second of what happened. If there's one message I want you to walk away with, it's this: protect your children fiercely. Believe them. Stand with them. Pay attention to the signs. And never assume danger can't come from someone who looks normal. The world becomes safer when good people refuse to stay quiet. When we push back against abuse. When we act, not later, but now. And if you've made it this far in the story, I just want to say thank you, from one parent to another, from one human being to another, for caring enough to listen. If this story moved you, please like this video, share it with someone who might need strength today, and tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. I read every single one. And if you want more real, emotional justice stories like this, hit that subscribe button so you never miss the next one. Because our stories don't just entertain, they protect, empower, and remind people that no matter how dark the world gets, justice will always, always find its way back.